Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace Zambias.
Hello.
And today I feel like we have some pretty good topics. Yours is pretty intense.
Mine is pretty intense. I had said I was going to cover this topic in the past. I wound up not doing it, but in honor of our 200th episode, I am finally going to be covering the Illuminati.
So it's going to be an extra long episode.
It'll be long for sure. I mean, it's episode 200. People say they like it long, so you're about to get it long.
Yeah, they do.
Robin,
JK,
what's your topic going to be?
So I'm going to do the possessions of Loudun.
The possessions of Loudun? So this is a place then, Loudun?
Yes.
And there's multiple possessions that take place here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's going to be super interesting.
Yeah.
Before we dive into your mass possession thing, we should talk about the things that we watched because we finished 2 series on Saturday.
Speaking of mass possession,
pretty
Midnight
happy about
Mass.
it. We watched Midnight Mass, which I thought was really good. I thought the last episode had about 1 to 40 too many monologues. I got so sick of hearing these people talk. I was just like, you know what? I'm just okay with everyone dying at this point because it's getting so annoyed. But overall, I thought the series was really good.
It was a really good series. I really enjoyed it. Rahul Cooley can hit me up whenever.
I was gonna say that sheriff. Goddamn.
that sheriff daddy. That show's it was very good. It was for after coming off of the disappointment of Bly Manor. Midnight Mass was a really good way to make it up to everyone, I think. And
I think it's a really good example of how with a show you have all this momentum and everyone's waiting for something to happen and everything kicks off in the penultimate episode, in the episode before the final one. Mm-hmm. And then with the final one, you're like, what the fuck happens now?
Yeah.
And I feel like the writers were like, all right, everyone has to have one last thing to say. So we'll give everyone one last thing to say. And then there was a character, one that can fly, that I didn't get to see what happened to it. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Of all the characters that I had to listen to through this whole friggin' episode.
But you know what happens to them.
I mean, you kind of know what happens. You're pretty certain based off of the last few things. But I mean, overall, I thought it was a solid show. And we also finished that same night Squid Game.
Yep.
And Squid Game was hyped up to me about being a super intense show.
I thought it was intense.
I thought it was intense. I thought it was very good. I have some coworkers who are like, so it's just like Battle Royale? It's like, well, yeah, people are fighting each other on a different scale.
But it's the underlying story that I think makes it so good.
It has just a lot of elements to it where people don't get forced into this thing. They actually get to choose whether or not they're going to participate. So then they have to deal with the repercussions of their choices. And there's all these other subplots that sort of run through that make you wonder what's going to happen in season 2. So I very much enjoyed Squid Game as well. I do highly recommend it. There are some really emotional parts. I know some people were saying that they had trouble with episodes 5 and 6. So I was prepared going into those. They are definitely sad as fuck.
Yeah.
So, I think the best I can say for Squid Game is the same thing that I was told when I started reading Game of Thrones, which is no one is sacred. No one is sacred. Don't get attached to too many people. Just based off the nature of what you're about to take in, just keep that in mind. And then it might not be as upsetting to some folks, but overall, I thought it was really good as well.
Yeah, I'm really wanting to go to Korea right now because I think Itaewon Station or whatever has just turned into the Squid Game playground.
And that's the train station or the subway station or whatever? Yeah, from the show.
And it's so cool because they have the girl sitting there for red light, green light, or whatever.
The girl robot?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And so they have, and it's just neat. I wish I could travel. I miss traveling internationally and being able to see specialized cafes for different shows, movies, things like that.
We'll be traveling in 3 days, 4 days, 3.5 days-ish
fuck.
to Philadelphia for SpookyCon 2021, which we're very excited for.
Yes.
So that will be a fun time. But yeah, if you have watched Midnight Mass or Squid Game, hit us up. Let us know what you thought about it. I'm interested to hear some takes. I was reading some stuff on the Spooky Friends group regarding Squid Game, and that's a fun thread. So, but yeah, good stuff. I enjoyed. Sometimes we get really disappointed. We bitch about it on the show. I think we got really lucky with the 2 things we watched this weekend. So
it was good.
All right. I believe you are going to be going first as far as topics goes. So take it away.
All right. So this week, our patrons actually helped me at least choose my topic. And
Robin did this thing where she put up a poll right after I proclaimed that I was covering the Illuminati on the live episode for story time. So I was just like, ooh, I'll cover one of these next week.
Yeah, so one of the top choices was Possession, which I was actually excited about. So this is the possessions that I'm gonna cover. I was really sad though. Only Captain Fake Eye selected true crime on that poll. And I was really sad. I was just really sad because I love true crime.
There was like
no one cared about true crime.
There was like 8 options, and yeah, there was only 1 vote for true crime, which I thought was kind of funny. I think it's because it is October. It's spooky
October.
Season.
Okay, yes, I will give you that.
And I think you asked folks. I think the title of the poll was like, "What are you looking forward to
in October?"
Okay, specifically. So I don't think everyone's like, "We're sick of true crime. The true crime wave is done." I think it's just specifically because it is October.
I know the first year we did this podcast, I did like the month of serial killers for October. So I'll try and think of spooky topics we can cover for October. But this first one I'm going to start off with. Oh, also shout out to Captain Fake Eye, my true crime buddy. But so I'm going to get into these. We're going to go back in time to a witchcraft trial in Loudun, France in 1634. So let's begin with 1617. A priest named Urbain Grandier was appointed to the parish of Saint-Pierre du Marche. I don't know. I don't speak French. I'm just going to assume that's what that is, right? In Loudun. And apparently he was considered good looking. He was wealthy. He was well educated. And he was a really popular preacher. Something that made others jealous. Like, a bunch of other priests were probably like, why can't we be hot and rich and smart and everybody wants to...
Even priests get jealous too?
Not everyone can be sheriff daddy. Being a parish in the Catholic Church, any hinky stuff was certainly looked at with more of a witch hunty eye back in the day. Some say that he was kind of a dirty priest. Like, some said that he would be aroused by angry husbands and fathers of the women that he would have relationships with. Like, he was kind of sketch, kind of scummy.
So he got turned on when people were angry that he was in a
messing
relationship
around
with
their, so it's just a little peek into what type of person he may have been. I'm not saying that he was like that, but a lot of people complained that he just was a crappy person.
It is hard to take the word of the people that are complaining about that human being, because a lot of times people exaggerate or say things from their perspective, and if they're jelly monsters, then it's really hard to tell.
Right. So, the Ursuline Convent opened in Loudun in 1626. In 1632, a prioress named Jeanne des Agnès, and she oversaw the nuns there, whose ages averaged around 25, so they were all really young. This was the year during which an outbreak of the plague was beginning to kind of fade out. So, because the plague was on its way out, the doctors were leaving, the wealthy property owners were leaving, people were trying to isolate themselves to prevent from getting sick, and the doctors didn't need to be there anymore because there's not a lot of plague anymore. What are they going to do, right? Even the convents had isolated themselves, so the nuns no longer took visitors or anything like that. This priest, though, Grandier, he kept going to see sick people and was giving money to the poor. So he wasn't a complete piece of shit. He was still out there doing God's work, so to speak. During this period of time, strange things began happening at this convent. So according to ecclesiastical record, which means just church records, right? The events began on September 22nd, 1632. Agnès, a sister de Colombier, and a sister Saint Monica were each visited in the night by a man of cloth asking for help. Not that it was an actual human, like an entity, a man in cloth, right? After this, the nuns would hear voices and were hit by unseen forces. They would even fall into fits of uncontrollable laughter. Eventually, physical evidence of possessions began to appear. So a ghost suddenly placed like hawthorns into the palm of the prioress. And after that happened, a bunch of irrational behavior and convulsions from the nuns started happening. And of course, exorcisms started happening because all this weird stuff's happening. The first of which was conducted on October 5th, 1632. So only a couple weeks after the weird things started to happen. They were like, we need to start some exorcisms. This shit's weird. So the prioress, Agnes, is said to have housed 7 demons within her. So one was in her forehead, one below her last rib on her right side, and one was like at the base of her stomach. And she had others too, equaling 7, right? This was supposedly, the places where they were at was supposedly a sign of the rank of demon. So the higher rank would be in the head.
So and the lowest rank is the butt, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Well,
or your feet.
Demon.
Or you know what I mean? You end up at the bottom if you're the shittiest demon. Nuns claimed that the demon Asmodeus was tormenting them, that he was sent there to commit evil acts. Among Asmodeus were a number of other evil spirits possessing the nuns, according to their answers during questioning. So according to them, they have all these demons in them. Those included other priests, someone named Zabulon, never heard of that one before. Other demons included Astaroth, Leviathan, and others. So there's a whole bunch of different demons that lived within these nuns, supposedly. After a week, Grandier, that super popular priest, was blamed as the sorcerer responsible for summoning the spirits.
Wow.
Though he'd never actually met any of these nuns before.
So they're just blaming this dude because he's hot, he's popular, he's getting ass.
Pretty much.
And they're like, you're the reason they became possessed.
So, yeah, my assumption is that there were jelly dogs that were trying to cut him.
Jelly dogs.
They were trying to cut him out of the Catholic Church pie. They're like, he's getting too much attention, he's too popular. And he was against he was against the current cardinal at the time. So they were just like, he doesn't follow our rules, we just need to get rid of him type. That's what I think. After that, the possessions kept happening. So even more possessions. A pastor, Nicholas Albin, wrote about the events. So he said the nuns struck their chests and backs with their heads as if they had their necks broken, and with inconceivable rapidity. So they just smacked their chests and backs.
It's like headbanging, but
yes.
like start to finish,
yes.
like all the way back.
Yeah. Really quickly. They twisted their arms at the joints of the shoulder, the elbow, or the wrist 2 or 3 times around. I imagine if you're double jointed, you can pull off a lot of this shit.
But only the double jointed chicks were possessed?
No. They, like, each nun did something different, whatever
okay,
they could pull off. They would lay on their stomachs and join their hands to their feet, something we all know is possible if you do some yoga. They would bark and swear and shout. They would utter cries so horrible and loud, like nothing heard before. Their faces became so frightful, one could not bear to look at them. Their tongues issued suddenly from their mouths, horrible, swollen, black, hard, and covered with pimples.
It sounds like the plague.
And yet, while in this state, they spoke distinctly. So even though their tongues were all fucked up, they could still speak like normal.
Gross.
Yeah, so this guy said that these nuns are pretty fucked up, right? There's something wrong with them. But I mean, if their tongues were black, there has to be something there. Maybe they ate ink, who knows?
My question is, did the tongues return to normal, like when the demons would subside? Or were their tongues just fucked up?
Yeah. After, I mean, it would, like, flare up, right? Like, their faces would be normal, and then they would be grotesque, and then they'd go back to normal.
Wow, that's crazy.
Doctors were brought in, so they had exorcists come in and ask, like, who's in them? And then the doctors would come in and be like, okay, what could possibly be the explanation for what's going on here? So they brought doctors in. News of what was going on at the convent spread. These nuns, their actions were bringing in a bunch of spectators, and the exorcists and the exorcisms were just bringing in all these people wanting to watch. So much so that they even started doing public exorcisms. So they would cart some nuns out.
That's really fucking odd.
They would take nuns out while they're being possessed and perform exorcisms on them. And Grandier filed a petition to fight against these slanderous attacks on him because he'd never met any of these people. They're saying he's the one causing all this. And he was adamant that he had nothing to do with what was happening with the nuns. The Archbishop of Bordeaux showed up and ordered the nuns to be sequestered, so isolated. They took them out, were like, everyone split up, y'all need to stop this. Upon their isolation, the signs of possession seemed to stop for a bit. So it's like, they're not together, so they're stopping now, kind of thing. In November of 1633, Jean de Laubardemont was sent to investigate the nuns, and Grandier was arrested as a precaution, preventing him from leaving the area in the case that he was indeed the reason for the possessions. So they're like, we don't want you to go anywhere, we don't really trust you, so we're going to arrest you. They also supposedly found devil's marks on him by poking him with a needle.
We poked you and you bled, you demon.
And it hurt, and then they'd move it and not poke him as hard, and it wouldn't hurt. So they're like, devil's marks, don't trust that shit. I don't know.
That's a really shitty technique. We poked him less hard and it didn't hurt.
Yeah. And I think that's bullshit evidence, as a lot of us know now with the witch hunts and stuff like that. And you couldn't trust these investigators because a lot of the time they did have ulterior motives and stuff like that.
And a lot of times in the case of old-time police, if they had a suspect in mind, what they would try and do is just prove they were right, rather than actually discover if they were correct.
Doctors that checked him over afterwards never found any of these quote-unquote devil marks. So it's something that's super sketch. When the commissioner began his investigation, he started taking statements from witnesses, and some claimed to have seen Grandier mysteriously around the convent all hours of the day. So he would just randomly be, it didn't matter what time of day it was, he would randomly be at weird different places. And no one knew how he was getting inside the convent. Of course, he was accused of performing indecent acts, and that was just what people did to him. I don't know why. Jean went back to Granier, asked him about everything that was said about him, and Granier was made to sign a document that acknowledged he was denying everything. He's like, I don't know why, what is going on, I did not do anything. So after he signs that, Jean returns to Paris with all his stuff and is like, hey, we need to look into this some more. He goes back to Loudun with a decree of the council. And what that is it's giving him all this power to do the investigation, and it prohibits any outside influence to hinder what he's trying to do. So he does that May 31st, 1634. He comes back. Granier was brought to Loudun as well. So Jean interrogates and observes the nuns, and he has Granier there to be a part of everything. And at this point, a lot of the nuns had actually been split up into different convents, so they're not all at the same one anymore. Because of the, they were isolated. They're like, we can't keep you guys together. The Bishop of Poitiers comes to Loudun himself after several doctors can't fix the situations with the nuns. They're still acting possessed. The exorcisms aren't helping. So he comes and tries to figure shit out. Over the span of 2.5 months, he performs exorcisms on the nuns along with other priests. And this is a bishop at this point. It's not just a bunch of priests, right? On June 23rd, 1634, Granier is brought in to be present for the exorcisms. They want to prove that the possessions were fake and ordered him to start doing some exorcisms and stuff like that. They didn't want to believe any of this stuff that's going on. They wanted to think that the nuns are faking it, stuff is going on. So they hand him the tools to start an exorcism. And he gets all ready for it. He begins the exorcism like normal. He supposedly spoke Greek during this. Supposedly. I'm not sure exactly, right? It was so fucking long ago. And that's supposedly something that the nuns had to be coached through because they didn't speak Greek. So it was really weird. The exorcism, understandably, accomplishes nothing. It's just a huge waste of time. Despite all of this, in August of 1634, the case is brought before local magistrates, and Granier is alleged to be a sorcerer having made a pact with the devil. They claimed he had been placing evil spells that caused the possession of these Ursuline monks. He was charged with the crime of magic causing demoniacal possession. So, he gets fucked, pretty much.
Well, I mean, he spoke Greek, though. That's super sus, right? Apparently.
So with the possessions, they would speak, like, Latin. They would speak all these different languages. And then the nuns would somehow be filled with demons that didn't speak those languages. It just so happened that they didn't understand the language because the demons didn't understand the language. So it was just really sketch overall. I mean,
everyone knows demons speak Abyssal, Draconic. No, I was just trying to pick languages from D&D.
One of the most damning pieces of evidence that was supposed to, like, be the heavy hitter that was like, you are working with the devil.
The smoking gun.
Was supposedly a written pact between Granier and the devil himself.
Oh, they had a copy of it. That's so nice.
Yeah. So it was allegedly stolen from Lucifer's cabinet of devilish agreements by Asmodeus. So Asmodeus went into Lucifer's drawer, pulled this thing out.
How the fuck did they get it? Did it fall out of Asmodeus' pocket?
So it was presented to this piece of paper was presented to the court as proof of Granier's involvement. The paper was signed by Satan, Beelzebub, Lucifer, this person called Elimi, Leviathan, and Astaroth. It was notarized, apparently, by someone.
You gotta have notaries in hell. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, by Balbrith. It's just...
Balbrith?
Like Ball, B-A-A-L, you know? It's
my
just...
favorite demon, Balbrith.
So it's just really weird. The thing, though, this piece of paper was literally written in the prioress's handwriting. So Agnes's handwriting. That's who, you know what I'm like, what the fuck? It's just,
I love there's a trial where they're like, this was stolen from Lucifer's file cabinet by his demon, and then they don't say how they got it from the demon.
I think because it was written in her handwriting, it's like, she had that demon. She had Asmodeus in her, so Asmodeus is the one that kind of gave the document to them.
How does that physically
I don't
work?
Know. Granier was condemned at the end of all of it.
Get the fuck out
Despite
of here.
begging for a lighter sentence, he was even like, hang me. Don't burn me at the stake. Just hang me instead. But he was sentenced to get burned at the stake. And that wasn't before being tortured by having his legs crushed to hell.
Jesus.
So they crushed his legs. Some say a fly appeared around his head as he was dying, which is a symbol of Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies.
God, people are just so
carrying
full of shit.
Grandier's soul to hell. That's what people thought. Which one? Rude. Okay, you're burning someone's fucking flesh. Of course, there's going to be flies.
Not to mention they smashed his fucking legs first.
Yeah, that's a lot of blood. One of the last things Granier said was telling a Father Lactance, one of the public exorcists, that he was going to see God in 30 days, which is what happened.
Wow.
So he died, and as he was dying, he reportedly cried out, "Granier, I was not responsible for your death."
So it's like he came back like, fucking told you to drag that dude to hell.
Other priests died. Other priests, those exorcists and things like that, died within years. One even tried to kill himself because he was so haunted by the exorcisms. Even after Granier's execution, the possessions did not stop. They kept going. They kept doing the public exorcisms too. And they continued until 1637. 3 years after Granier's execution. Twice a day, they held these public exorcisms. Twice a day, except for Sunday, of course. That's God's day. So twice a day, they would wheel these nuns out to do these public executions for 3 years. It's just nuts. In a report by Moishe Sluhovsky, he states the last departing demons left clear signs of their exit from her body.
They left signed documents saying, I left, Beelzebub.
Her being Jeanne de Agnès, the mother superior of that convent, the prioress. When the names Joseph and Mary miraculously appeared inscribed on her left arm. So once she had that stuff pop up, they're like, demon's gone, you're free. Supposedly, Agnès had a vision that she would be freed from the devil if she made a pilgrimage to the tomb of Saint Francis de Sales. And she went to Annecy in France, then visited Cardinal Richelieu and King Louis XIII in 1638. Supposedly, after this pilgrimage, the demons were gone.
So she just gets to take this super fucking long vacation, and she's like, that'll really make the demons go away.
She went on to publish an autobiography in 1644 of her experiences. So she is just like living it up. She
got a book deal out of it and everything.
And the thing with all the nuns that went to that convent they were from, like, nobility. They weren't just a bunch of
peasants.
Yeah. So she was familiar with that fancy life and she wanted more, and she probably did all this shit to get it, you know? Who knows, though? In total, about 27 nuns claimed to have been bewitched or possessed in this whole thing. Post-possession era, kind of, sort of, around 40 or so years later, there are those that have concluded that all of it was a ploy to take out Granier, or because he was actually against the ruling cardinal, Richelieu, which there's a freaking town named after him, apparently. Richelieu wanted to tear down the walls surrounding Loudun in order to destroy any strongholds and fortifications, because it's like post-war or something like that. And the people that lived there, the Huguenots or something like that, I forget what they were called, are not with the Catholic Church. And so this guy is like, we need to tear down their fortifications in case, you know, if they're against us, we need to be able to just crush them. So Granier did not want to do that. He wanted them to keep the walls up around Loudun. And so some say by doing this, he kind of sealed his fate, like they're going to cut you off. There is a different theory, though, that it was all publicity for the church, because
I was going to say, every time they rolled them out for those public exorcisms.
After all the public exorcisms, many of the Protestant people that lived there converted to Catholicism.
Out of fear.
Yep. So there's a lot of stuff at play here when it comes to these possessions and the church and all this stuff. But who knows? Because you don't know if they're real or not, right? Maybe they were. Who knows? Maybe Asmodeus really did steal from Lucifer's drawers.
He's like, can you just write this out for me? I swear I'll get it notarized.
There were a lot of reports on how the nuns had to be coached through these exorcisms because they didn't speak certain languages and things like that. But a lot of these things can be explained away by this or that, or politics or things. And I can see the places in the story where it's just like, this is just political bullshit. But I want to believe that some of it is like, you know, Beelzebub out there taking people to hell.
If I can summarize what I think happened here, it's Father Hot Pants showed up, started getting tons of ass. People got jelly. And then after that, some of the nuns were like, we don't like Father Hot Pants. Let's pretend to be possessed. And then the cardinal was like...
I gotta tell you another theory. There was a theory that Agnès chick was... She started, like, having sexy dreams about this hot priest dude. And so she became obsessed with him. And when he turned her down...
She was like, I will get you killed.
She was like, yeah, fuck you.
And then the cardinal is just like, oh, well, I can kill two birds with one stone. One, I can march these chicks out to be publicly executed to freak everyone out. Great publicity for the church. And then on top of that, I'll blame Father Hot Pants, who's being way too supportive of the locals, and he won't let us tear down their walls, and we'll just kill him to get him out of the way. It sounds like it was like super political and just there was a bunch of different motivations. And Father Hat Pants is like, I'm just here to get laid, man. Like, stop it. So that is pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah.
What's also interesting is I'll be covering stuff that involves Catholics and Protestants as well. Those words came up a lot during my topic. But before we get into mine, we are going to take a quick commercial break. And we are back. So this week, in honor of our 200th episode, I wanted to cover a topic that I stated I was going to cover multiple times in the past. It is, of course, the Illuminati, as I have mentioned, as the episode title has already shown you. And I think it's important to go ahead and let you know how I'm going to cover this topic. I'm going to be digging into the actual historical origins of the secret, in air quotes, society called the Illuminati. Now,
it's not very secret because everybody knows about it.
I say Illuminati, no one's like, oh, what's that? You've heard of it, which means it's a really bad secret society.
Yeah, it's that strip club, Illuminati.
Illuminati. What I'm going to do is dive into the historical facts and sort of the way things have gone, because there's like multiple sects and possible beginnings of the Illuminati. I'm not going to dive into every batshit crazy conspiracy theory that tosses the Illuminati into it. I will cover some of them after I've covered the history, so you understand sort of how stupid Illuminati conspiracy theories have gotten, because it's kind of exponentially grown. Like, I remember when Kanye West interrupted Taylor Swift's acceptance speech when she was accepting her award. Multiple people back in Indiana told me, completely convinced, 100%, Kanye West is part of the Illuminati, and that was him inducting her into the Illuminati. And it's like, so you're telling me the enlightened ones, the ones who are trying to spread science and rationality are somehow now
crazy.
Just crazy fucking artists?
I think people equate Illuminati to people that have money. You know what I mean? And I think that's why a lot of people think the celebrities are in the Illuminati.
I think what people have the mistake of doing is the Illuminati is this quote-unquote secret society that's super famous. So it must be a bunch of super famous people that are in it.
It's people you guys don't even
And that's the thing about secret societies, is that's not supposed to be the case. That said, I'm not going to cover a lot of those things. I will eventually get to that. But I want to really go through the actual history of the Illuminati, because there's a lot of things that are not true, that are completely misinterpreted, that I want to cover. The first of which, and I told Robin this before, if you Google Illuminati, on the right-hand side of Google, you'll see the triangle, like the all-seeing eye that's supposedly on the top of the pyramid on our money. That is not their symbol. They had many symbols, but the Illuminati symbol is an owl sitting on top of a book. That's the actual Illuminati symbol. There are certain symbols that are associated with a bunch of other secret societies, like the all-knowing eye, that somehow just get wrapped up and people are like, oh, it's Illuminati. There are so many other secret societies out there, some not as famous, some just as famous, that have different things. And when people see it, regardless of who it is, they're like, oh, it's Illuminati. And that has happened quite a bit. So I will cover some of this stuff, but first and foremost, I will also say, I'm not going to be covering the plot of Angels and Demons here. You're not going to get some
that's what I was thinking
sort of
about.
adventure where we're going to go through Rome together and find the churches of knowledge. Spoilers, if you haven't seen that movie, the Illuminati are a red herring in that too.
Yeah.
So that's all a bunch of bullshit.
Because they don't exist in that.
They didn't exist in that. They had some actual documents that someone cooked up a fucking plot to try and overthrow the church. It's really convoluted and stupid.
I'm just thinking of how Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D.
That is a more accurate depiction of what the Illuminati would actually be than Angels and Demons.
Yeah.
But before we get into this, I want to say two major things. One is that the Illuminati have deep connections to multiple religions, most notably Christianity, most notably Catholics. Not always in a good way. In fact, barely ever in a good way.
Really?
This topic isn't meant to offend anyone. It's a historical study of one of the most famous secret societies in the history of mankind. Side note, we've already mentioned it. If you're a famous secret society, you're doing a really bad fucking job of being a secret. Even Fight Club had rule number 1, come the fuck on. The second thing I want to say...
That was rule number 1 of Fight Club.
You don't talk about Fight Club. Rule number 1 of Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. The second thing I want to say is that I'm sure most, if not all of you, have heard some things about the Illuminati before. And as cool as familiarity with a topic is typically, please do not at me with a million conspiracy theories like, oh, actually, they're a part of this. I don't want to fucking see it. I don't care. I've almost certainly already seen it and decided I was not going to include it in the show because it's outlandish and has no basis in fact. All right, so let's start at the beginning here. When most folks want to sit down and actually talk about the Illuminati, they typically reference the society that came from Bavaria, the Bavarian Illuminati, which was formed in the late 18th century. And we will get to them, but I will start with references to the Illuminati that came before the Bavarian Illuminati, so you have a clear picture of how frequently these things came up. And here's the thing you have to understand about the Illuminati. There are a bunch of different groups throughout history who have used this name, primarily because it's a really cool name. It comes from the Latin word illuminatus, which means revealed or enlightened. So people just want to use this name as their group. It's like when I say I listen to the Adventure Zone, okay? Some of you think D&D podcast because you know what it is, but others may hear Adventure Zone and think a local amusement park, a recreation center. That goes by the exact same name because Adventure Zone is a very common thing to say.
I'm pretty sure there's an Adventure Zone out here, and it's one of those places where they have all the foam and trampolines.
There are a million places called that. So similarly, there were a lot of things called the Illuminati for a very long time. There are groups that use the name Illuminati that date back to the 15th century. 2 groups, in fact, so I'll cover both of them, okay? One of them doesn't directly use the name Illuminati, but a bunch of Illuminati legend overlaps with them. The first, the earliest reference in actual texts that historians have been able to locate dates back to the year 1492, which is an odd year to be the first because, as most Americans are taught in school, that's when Columbus set sail on the voyage that would eventually discover the quote-unquote New World. I was taught in second grade, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. That's what we were taught in second grade. Not going to go any further. I am recording this on Columbus Day, or as it should be known, Indigenous Peoples Day, because Columbus
is a dickhead.
Was a piece of shit.
Yep.
So that said, this there's just the association with that date. So seeing 1492 on Columbus Day, I was like, oh shit, coincidence? I think not. So the society that was present in 1492 has been studied, and it's believed to have originated from a religious movement known as Gnosticism. Gnostocism. It's a schism, Gnosticism, which is thought
it's a schism
to have originated in the 1st century. So before we got into like the triple digits, still in the double digits, the century where Jesus Christ supposedly lived, it's the same time that Gnosticism kicked off. Some folks say the Gnosticism that eventually fed into this Illuminati in 1492 actually predates Christ slightly and was forming when Christ came of age.
Is it kind of like how when people are like, I'm agnostic, does it stem from that? Like Gnosticism is believing in, church and...
I don't think so. I think agnostic is like the opposite of Gnostic.
Yeah.
Because Gnostic is basically you're associating a bunch of different types of religions and traditions and religious ideas, and you're not trying to say, oh, these are all Christians. Like you can look back on like the origins of things like Easter or Christmas and the dates and how they overlap with like pagan holidays, rather than just replacing it and giving it like a new name. They're just like, oh, all this shit coexists peacefully. The biggest difference that they had with all these other religions is that they would include everything, but they had a different idea of who God was, which everyone has like a different origin of who like the one true God is, or if there is just one. And then they wound up having a different idea of who Jesus Christ was and what his mission was. So that's kind of where they diverge from Christianity, but they overlap quite a bit. The group of Gnostics assumed the name Alumbrados in 1492, because this was actually done in Spain. Which translates to illumination or illuminated, which is why they're the first technical Illuminati to be documented. Their beliefs in particular was that the human soul could reach a degree of perfection that when reached, and I'm paraphrasing here because there's a lot of stuff that's been said about it, can more or less understand the essence of God and the Holy Trinity to a level where you no longer need the sacrament, which is something that's super controversial if you're a Catholic in 1492. We were saying, like, you don't need the body of Christ. You don't need the blood of Christ. You don't need to be blessed by Christ anymore. Once you reach this level of enlightenment, which is very certainly similar to like Buddhism and Hinduism, you don't need it anymore because you understand God on a different level. It also meant that, quote, carnal desires may be indulged and other sinful actions committed freely without sustaining the soul.
So you can fuck.
You can basically do whatever the fuck you want. It's essentially... You're free of consequence because God knows you're sorry, so you can do whatever you want.
That level.
But you have to get to that level first.
How much money do you got to put
That's
into
the thing,
system?
is like you have to get into the cult first and work your way up, and then once you get there, you're free to do whatever you want.
Sounded a lot like Scientology.
So I know I wrote that and I deleted it because I was like, I don't want them to come after me.
Okay.
A woman named Maria de Santo Domingo became a leader of this group and went on to earn the title of the Holy Woman of Piedrahita, which is where she is from. She was said to have a direct connection that allowed her to communicate with Jesus Christ himself and the Virgin Mary. So pretty impressive connections to have.
Got a satellite phone.
So the idea wound up taking hold with a lot of Spanish Catholics at the time, and she was favored by some of the royalty of Spain, which is good. Because in 1492, we're about 20 years into a 400-year project that was known as the Spanish Inquisition.
Oh, cool. I was going to say that. Nice.
The Spanish Inquisition labeled the leaders and proselytizers as, quote, false mystics, which is something you really don't want to be labeled by the Spanish Inquisition. It is like not just a heretic. It's like, oh, you're really making us mad now. The royalty Maria had become close with used their influence to protect her when she was being investigated in 1510 by the Inquisition. They eventually cleared her, and she went on to be almost like a private priest for royalty within certain parts of Spain.
All right.
So other members of Alumbrados were not so lucky. Most were, quote unquote, made to renounce their heresy by the Spanish Inquisition, mainly just through torture, basically saying you're going to say these things out loud or this is going to continue.
Crushing people's legs.
Lots of really, really horrible stuff here. When you were reading that, I was like, I wonder if the Spanish Inquisition just moved up to France a little bit and took care of that, because they weren't just limited to Spain. Other base level members of this group would spread the word and run afoul of the Spanish Inquisition, meeting the same fate, sometimes disappearing entirely. The Spanish Inquisition was very active in making sure the anti-church sentiment, especially the anti-Catholicism sentiment of you don't need the sacrament, did not take a solid hold within Spain.
Sometimes I just want a cracker and some wine, though. I mean,
I know. You can just have those at home, though, right? Just get yourself a box of Jesus and you're good to go.
Jesus!
I didn't realize until I remember knowing it in high school, and I have since forgotten. I forgot the Spanish Inquisition lasted 400 years. The Spanish Inquisition lasted until the United States of America was like 80 years old, which is fucking nuts considering it started when Christopher Columbus, like 20 years before Christopher Columbus set sail to accidentally land in the Caribbean, claim it as the New World, and call everyone Indians because he's a fucking idiot. So the group kind of faded away in Spain, but there were still followers of Alumbrados. It made its way north to France by the early 1600s, the exact same time where your story takes place in the exact same place. Well, not exact same, except it was in France. They wound up switching the name from the Spanish version to the French version of Illuminé, which means the illuminated.
That's bananas.
So again, the movement preached these ideas that were still very religious, but anti-church. And a man named Pierre Guérin, who was a French priest who had followers called Guernets. I'm just
shit.
It's the 1600 version of Cumberbitches.
Oh yeah.
He started spreading the word in 1634, which is exactly when your shit was popping off, same years. And his group were quote unquote suppressed in 1635. The French priests they basically were made to be told, keep your fucking mouth shut and go back to doing things the right way, or you will die. Some of them did die. Some of them just switched back. Some of them started practicing on the DL, but they kept their mouth shut and they weren't proselytizing anymore.
I just keep in my head, I'm just thinking of all the Dan Brown stuff that he's done with the Da Vinci Code and everything.
He did a lot of research, and I will get into some stuff that's a little bit creepy near the end of this that really reminded me of some Dan Brown shit. Despite the suppression, though, the Illuminati hung around France for a century, with groups popping up occasionally and then being suppressed again. A sect of the Illuminati took really strong hold in the south of France in 1722, and it actually remained there until 1794. So it was there for over 70 years until it faded out. I found a few sites that listed the cause of the fade as corruption with a new generation of quote-unquote French prophets within this sect who were gaining prominence within the Illuminati and using their power to be corrupt, basically.
All right.
Which sucks, and that happens very, very frequently. So that's the first group. That's sort of the ascent, the rise, and then the fall that they had from 1400s all the way until around the 1800s. This second group that I'm going to cover is different. They also date back to the 1400s. They are called the Rosicrucians. The Rosicrucians gained prominence in 1537. They basically came out and said, hey, we're this secret society. Some crazy shit just happened for us, proving that we are correct. All of you suck our dicks. Also, we've been around since 1422. We just chose to keep ourselves secret for 120 years. And without getting too deep into it, their beliefs were a really big mixture of a bunch of stuff, including Gnosticism that we already covered, alchemy, so tons of science were involved in this, Judaism, and a bunch of other stuff. So like Hinduism, Buddhism, there was one other ism that's in there as well that I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but it's really a combination of alchemy and mysticisms of all sorts. So they want to include science and the amazing things science can do with religions of all kinds. They believe that their founder, a man named Christian Rosicrucians, who may or may not have existed. He's like a fictional character that people think didn't actually live at any point, found secret wisdom searching multiple holy lands and brought it back to Germany. He picked 3 people when he got back to start up the Rosicrucians. And then when it kind of gained more popularity, they decided to bump that number up from 4 total to 8 total. When they hit 8, everyone had everything down. They all split apart to different parts of the country to spread the word. Wow. They wrote 3 documents. The number 1 document is called the Fama Fraternitatis, which basically breaks down Christian's journey and gives, among other things, an invitation at the end of it to, quote unquote, some few to join the fraternity. One rule of this group was
there
that...
hazing?
What's that?
Was there hazing?
I don't know. I'm sure there was some sort of ritual to initiate people, but I didn't look it up. Honestly, I don't think I'll be able to find it. One rule of this group is that it was to remain secret for 100 years. And they had written this before they came public.
And that's why they popped up.
They waited 120 years. They revealed the secret burial place where Christian was supposedly buried at the beginning of the religion. And they stated that he had been buried there for over 100 years. When they found it and uncovered it, his body was still in perfect condition. So that to them proved that their whole thing is real, and that he also had a bunch of additional texts and symbols that were incredibly important to them. And that was what they decided to come public with and start recruiting and have essentially their people start going and having pilgrimages to spread the good word to other folks.
All right.
Once they split up and started sending more people out, once they were public knowledge, the location of their vault was lost. No one knows where it is anymore, but it supposedly actually existed. Whether or not a 120-year-old corpse was preserved perfectly in it is obviously still up for debate. There isn't actually a ton written about the group ending. And even the origins are highly debated about who might have actually wrote the Fama Fraternitatis. I'm not saying it right. I don't think. I've already forgotten. It is said that this group had several notable members of philosophers, theologians, scientists, and artists. One notable member was Sir Francis Bacon. He was a philosopher and the father of the scientific method.
Any relation to Kevin?
No. I don't know. I don't think he's related to Kevin Bacon, but I haven't checked. Everyone's 6 degrees away from Kevin Bacon, so I'm sure he is too. Despite not having any specific name like Illuminati, this group was very notable, and they had some symbology and some secret society type of ideas that make people associate things that are from them with the Illuminati, which we'll cover here in a little bit. They faded out here and there, but people kind of say they didn't really fade out. People just stopped talking about them, and they weren't very public. And then they come back with a little bit of different beliefs in the 1700s that wind up overlapping with different groups or different sects.
I think that's normal, though, because as you grow, as time passes,
you evolve.
Right.
And this society is certainly like that. So this next one that I'm going to get into is the most often referenced when people actually talk about the Illuminati, and that is the Bavarian Illuminati. So a guy named Johann Adam Weishaupt, or Weishaupt if you're going to say it the German way, who went by Adam, not Johann. Nice. Had been working for the Catholic Church for a very specific group of Jesuits. And the Pope at the time dissolved his group, and he had to deal with some Red Church with, essentially, he got new bosses, and they were assholes, and they undercut his work and the work of anyone who weren't doing enough clerical duties. Like, if you're not doing enough related to the religion itself, if you're just sort of working with us, if you're like freelancers, you're contractors, They would treat you like shit, and they would make you look like an asshole as often as humanly possible. They would also shit on anyone who was a Protestant, because they fucking hated Protestants because they weren't Catholics.
Yeah.
Or were liberal, because conservatives were the way to go, because you shouldn't be thinking about anything. You should be listening to what the church tells you. So Adam, who was forward-thinking, started to look for a society who valued logic, reason, and science above religion and superstition. He actually turned to Freemasonry, but there were fees associated with becoming a Freemason.
Okay.
It was very expensive, and they were also not very open to outside ideas, specifically his. So he said, fuck this, and he started a secret society of his own that fit his own agenda. And this is the man who on May 1st, 1776 in Bavaria, now Germany, created the Illuminati. He is the creator of the Illuminati. If you haven't heard his name before and you've talked about the Illuminati, what the fuck have you been talking about? That's all I have to say. So his agenda was, quote, to put an end to the machinations of the purveyors of injustice, to control them without dominating them. He wanted to control these people who commit injustices across the world, specifically religion, without them even fucking knowing he was controlling them.
That makes sense, then.
That was the goal of the Illuminati once it started. That said, they were not initially called the Illuminati. The first name chosen was the Covenant of Perfectibility. No, I am not joking. That is not an Adam Diaz original. That is the other Adam. That was the first name of the Illuminati. He thought it wasn't a good name and decided to switch. I'm betting as a person who's also named Adam and is picky with naming things, he knew there was something already called the Illuminati and didn't want that name. Before settling on the name Illuminati, Adam actually considered the name B Order, B-E-E, after the bug, B Order, and decided, nah, let's go with Illuminati. I'm totally serious about this. I'm not making this up.
That's nuts.
What's kind of ironic is that after forming the secret society out of frustration with, in particular, the Catholic Church, he based their organization off of Catholicism, in particular, the Jesuit sect that he had been a part of previously. So there were 3 different ranks initially: novices, Minervals, and illuminated Minervals. There's some websites that claim that there was a bunch of different ranks. Those don't come until later, and I'll talk about
Novices or novices?
I say novices and novices interchangeably, however you want to say it.
Okay.
Adam recruited from his own students at the time because he was a professor, among things, and started out the Illuminati with like minds that were focused on propagating ideas of science and acceptance. Starting out, the first members used aliases when referring to one another. So Adam was known as Spartacus. His students held the aliases of Ajax, Agathon, Tiberius, and Erasmus. It took hold pretty quickly when they started to spread these ideas.
And then they made the Kingsmen.
The Illuminati's focus on opposing the oppression of religion really gained traction. Shocker, it gained traction in a time where the Spanish Inquisition was still pretty active. Even though this was Germany, everyone knew who they were. Everyone knew about the oppression of the Catholic Church. So, not just average Joe types were coming out of the woodworks in Bavaria. They had like dukes and grand dukes that were becoming members, very affluential people that also had money, started financially donating to the perpetuation of the Illuminati. Some of the students wound up graduating, and they left the order because they didn't take it that seriously. When it started out, they're like, this would be cool to do, and they didn't realize how much traction it was going to gain. Once some of those originators started to leave, serious recruitment of powerful individuals became the primary focus.
Okay.
And it should be noted that for a society that was supposed to be rationalist and forward-thinking and accepting, they refused to allow pagans, Jews, women, monks, and anyone who was a member of any other secret society, which they later did a complete 180 on, which we're about to talk about. They targeted educated individuals and Christians of good character, but primarily they wanted to focus on rich, impressionable, and people who were eager to be a part of something, preferably all 3, and most importantly,
so it's a fucking cult.
Most importantly, young, 18 to 30 was what they're looking for.
It's a cult.
Also very much like Scientology, looking for people who are impressionable with a ton of fucking money. They wound up running into multiple problems that put them in a really bad spot. One was that there were already secret societies within Germany. The Freemasons were recruiting some of the same people as them, sometimes directly from their society. And in addition to that, Adam wanted to make sure his secret society was kept completely secret from another organization that was big and powerful that he feared would attempt to infiltrate, destroy, or pillage his people. And that society was the Rosicrucians. He was terrified of them.
Oh, wow.
He thought if they found out he existed, that would be the end of the Illuminati. They already had established a foothold in Germany. They weren't anti-religion, so they were a little bit more palatable to folks who are looking to join a secret society, and they were pro-monarchy. So the governments of Germany and around Germany were kind of okay with them existing if they knew of them because they weren't trying to overthrow the government. They already had this established foothold, and they viewed a society run by rationalists, scientists, and philosophers as hell on earth.
Wow.
It's a small world, and these secret societies are all recruiting from a very, like Germany as of right now, the borders that it is around the size of Wisconsin. It's not a giant place. The borders didn't exist as we know them then, but still, it wasn't this like giant area. And if you're looking for rich, affluential people who have like a mind that's willing to be taught new things, there's only so many people that you can recruit, basically. They had to kind of get rid of that idea that you don't recruit from other members of secret societies. You had to start pillaging from them. Despite these problems with recruitment, the Illuminati started acquiring property to operate out of. So it's not just a fucking group of people on the internet.
They're getting huge.
Like, they're actually starting to get places that are under the name of a particular member or a different organization.
Did they make like a corporation or anything?
I mean, there's not a corporation back during this time. Oh. They're just having all these different lodges, essentially, where they can meet and recruit people into their society. So they're actually gaining bases, is basically the way I kind of like look at this. They had to go through the legal means to acquire these lodges, but they kept their intentions secret. And with that expansion and actual basis of operation, things started to get complicated, and really quickly. It really became too many cooks in the kitchen. A lot of people wanted to be leaders. They wanted to bring in their own ideas. And Adam was a bit of a prick and didn't like to share. So
you guys are like twins.
By 1780, go fuck yourself. So 4 years later, recruiters for the Illuminati were able to pull one of the Freemasons' most coveted members, a man named, and this is before the name got ruined, Adolf Freer Niggy. Adolf was interested in alchemy and the higher sciences and thought the Illuminati would be a place where he could obtain new cutting-edge knowledge. He started climbing the ranks of the society, and Adam was kind of worried about how quickly he was climbing the ranks. He was charismatic, people liked him, he had connections fucking everywhere, especially with the Freemasons. So rather than let him continue to rise, he kept him at the second level and put him on 100% recruiting duty, which he did very well. He pulled a lot of people from the Freemasons into the Illuminati. In the meantime, other branches of the Illuminati would start to form. They would obtain property. Adam would be like, fuck yeah, we're starting to spread throughout this country. This is awesome. And then they'd be like, yo, we're autonomous. We don't give a shit what anyone else is doing. Our sect of the Illuminati is our own thing. Stay the hell away from us. So that's hard. Like, all of a sudden, your secret society you created, people buy into it, and then they decide like they're going to make their own club and you're no longer allowed.
It's like they started making chapters, and then those chapters
split
decided
away.
Okay.
Exactly. In the meantime, trying to keep all these things in check, prominent personalities were becoming a huge problem. They were beginning to butt heads. People wanted higher ranks. They wanted to outrank each other. People wanted to look down at each other, basically. By 1782, they restructured the Illuminati. There was now 3 classes. Class 1 was called the Nursery. It had the ranks of Novitiate or Novice, Minerval, and Illuminatus Minor. Class 2 was the Masonic. This is where a bunch of people that were being pulled from the Freemasons wound up immediately being above the Novice rank and any of the Class 1 ranks. You're like, I'm a Freemason. You don't fucking tell me that someone else outranks me. I come in at Class 2. So there was Apprentice, Companion, and Master. There were 2 other ranks that were separate from like the Freemasons when they came in, and they were Scottish ranks, and they were called Scottish Novice and Scottish Knight. Freemasons were very big in Scotland as well. I'm not sure what separates these 5, but those are the 5 that existed at Class 2. Class 3 were called the Mysteries. And there was the Priests, the Princes, the Mage or Magus, and the King. I believe the King is the top. That is Adam. After they reformed the class system, they started to recruit again hard. And Adolf targeted officers and leaders of the Freemasons. He targeted folks in particular who ran and or owned the lodges the Freemasons operated out of. Because if you can recruit one person, all of a sudden that's your fucking base of operations. And Freemason people that show up for those meetings, all of a sudden you're a different society. You're telling them different things. You have all these people that you're trying to recruit from the Freemasons. It was a brilliant tactic, and recruitment kept moving ahead. By 1782, the membership that was verifiable was 650 people. Adam claimed the number of Illuminati was actually 2,500. The vast majority kept their identities secret because they didn't want folks to know, because they were at high levels of society with influence. They didn't want to be known as someone that was a member of the Illuminati. At this point, they had accumulated multiple governors of specific areas of land.
Wow.
Chancellors, dukes, grand dukes, counts, artists. All of note at the time, no one whose name you would recognize. There's no one's name that I would toss out there and be like, oh yeah, I know who that is.
Okay.
Because this really only takes place for about 20 years, a little bit less. Not every recruitment effort worked. There was a very famous Swiss poet at the time named Johann Caspar Lavater, who declined to join. And he was very deliberate in why. He loved the idea behind the Illuminati, behind the order of it all, the humanitarian mission to bring peace to people and equality, the rationalist goals to move society to a better place where people aren't persecuted. He just didn't believe that they could accomplish this mission from secret. You had to do it publicly. You had to be an organization that put public pressure on the people who were the oppressors.
Okay.
And he thought their focus on recruitment would wind up holding them back from achieving their goals. And he was not wrong. The recruitment efforts brought the attention of the Rosicrucians. They took notice and they actively began targeting the Illuminati members for recruitment.
Wow.
These fucking dudes built special rooms. So when they brought in Illuminati members to try and convince to join their society, these people are basically saying, like, we have magic. We have actual magic. And they built these rooms so that they could show off magic as if it were real. And they were stealing members because they're like, these dudes are fucking magicians.
Wow.
And they literally started recruiting directly from the Illuminati. And that said, they started using assets they controlled to expose the Illuminati as an organization. No longer were they going to be a secret society. The Rosicrucians were like, we're going to get you in the public eye. And not in a good way. They would say that they are forward-thinking progressives, they're liberals, which are dangerous, they're anti-church, they're anti-religion, and they're attempting to start revolutions all over the world wherever they are located. This shit continued through 1784, when anti-religious pamphlets began to appear all over the country. And it freaked people out. They were super aggressive in their message, and it was said that the Illuminati was trying to recruit. And despite the fact that the Illuminati were still trying to remain secretive, these pamphlets were everywhere. So everyone knew who the Illuminati was and that they were dangerous.
They were being Illumithatis.
The Illuminati had nothing to do with the pamphlets, but the Rosicrucian members made sure that the Illuminati would take the blame for these pamphlets, bringing a ton of attention to them. It caught the attention of the Elector of Bavaria, otherwise known as the ruler of Bavaria. If it had a chancellor or a king or a president, it is this man, and the Catholic Church. The church encouraged official action to be taken against the Illuminati, but not just them. Whatever propaganda campaign had been waged backfired when Charles Theodore, the Elector of Bavaria, put forth a new edict in 1784. He announced this new law outlawed all secret societies, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Rosicrucians, all of them. It was now illegal to be a part of this society. You could be arrested. There were penalties up to and including death for being a known member of these societies. And he didn't just pass that law. He wound up passing additional laws, further outlawing and just like hunting down secret society members in 1785, the next year, 1787, and 1790.
He really did not like them.
The Illuminati were officially on the run. The secret part of their secret society was now more crucial than ever, and in 1785, there were some level 1 Minervals in Bavaria, in Munich, and these folks thought they could start gaining some traction, some station in their day-to-day political lives by telling everyone that would listen that they were 1, Illuminati, 2, powerful and dangerous because they were Illuminati, and 3, not a fan of monarchies. They thought they should all go away, which not necessarily is a bad thing, but at the time, pretty fucking dumb to be spouting all this nonsense. And people took notice. They weren't super high in number, but when folks caught wind that Illuminati could be deciding legal matters in particular, this witch hunt was on from the public. People were fucking furious. People started to be outed as Illuminati, and it became apparent that an Illuminati person sitting in judgment of an Illuminati plaintiff would almost always rule for their brethren, and people were thinking they're controlling society from the top.
How do you know?
Because people were being outed as Illuminati, and then they're realizing there's public record of people going and asking for judgments and rulings, and Illuminati are ruling for Illuminati. And it came out that they held high positions in the Catholic Church in various parts of the country. They were outing a bunch of Jesuits that had pissed off Adam in particular, and that made the Catholic Church start hunting them as well. That is what triggered the Second Law in 1785 and the real hunt for the members and leaders. In 1785, Adam fled the country. He abandoned the Illuminati, as did many of the other leaders who went into hiding as well. When Adam fled, the Bavarian government raided his property, obtained tons of documents, lists of members, internal correspondence, and just decided to publish all of it publicly to out everyone. Other high-standing members that got raided as well had all their information taken and made public, including their intentions on running things from behind the scenes and replacing religion with reason and science. It was a fucking shit show. The edict, essentially, that was passed on March 2nd, 1785 to hunt these guys was essentially the actual death of the Illuminati. The society never recovered. It was a mess. They still had members out there, but they kept hidden, and everyone had eyes on anyone trying to do anything against religion, against the Catholic Church, anything that's not conservative, anything that's progressive. And if you did it, you would be burned at the stake, sometimes literally. Conservatives of the time decided that they now had their new boogeyman to keep people in line. And for the next decade to 15 years, anything that seemed to be a progressive thought was met immediately with accusations of Illuminati association and infiltration. Documents were written denouncing the group. So basically everyone came out of the woodworks to write some pamphlet. Imagine it's the talk shows of today. Everyone has a fucking opinion.
Okay.
They all wrote it down on pamphlets or into books to sell to basically state that the Illuminati are evil in some way, shape, or form. They claimed that they were behind every door and lurking down every alleyway, trying to teach people and convert them away from monarchies and the church. The group had been driven into hiding, but the folks that did it seemed to somehow be the ones that knew all the inner workings of this secret society that they had pulled apart. Books were still being published in 1797 and 1798, about 10 years after they were disassembled, and sold like fucking hotcakes, claiming that the Illuminati were alive and well, attempting to overthrow governments all around the world. They blamed the Illuminati for the French Revolution that had just happened. They stated they were 100% behind all of it. The church printed copies of the same books and just made slight edits and rewrites. They titled it Proofs of the Real Existence and Dangerous Tendency of Illuminism. It was literally written to tell people not to question the church, do not become educated. This is what will happen. You will become evil and you will be hunted.
It's fucked up.
This exact document made its way to America. The first printed account of the Illuminati in the United States of America came on May 9th, 1798 by a minister warning his congregation against the evils of atheists, progressives, liberals, and revolutionists. Which is super fucking ironic because America was about 20 years removed from being progressives, liberals, and revolutionists when they fucking went to war and declared their independence
away from Britain, the monarchy. Yeah.
Which is so goddamn funny that it took 20 years for people to immediately backpedal and say, be afraid of all of these ideas yet again. The U.S. presidential election in 1800 even had the candidates speak on the dangers of secret societies like the Illuminati. Wow. They were the topic of the century. The anti-Illuminati rhetoric was even used to stoke fears in the U.S. of immigration that could come from newly formed countries in the Caribbean, and they used the slave rebellions happening in the Caribbean because they were throwing the French out as proof the Illuminati must have taken hold there. And if you remember what I mentioned a few episodes ago, that slave rebellion that was used to cause fear in Americans about immigration as far back as 1800s, that is the exact reason why Napoleon sold the Louisiana Purchase to the United States. They only wanted one part of that, like the southern tip of the Louisiana Purchase. And he's like, fuck that, dude. The slaves are rebelling. I don't want anything to deal with it. Take everything. The Louisiana Purchase gave about a third of the United States as we know it to the country. And they wanted like a tenth. No. They wanted like 1,000th of that. And it's because of those slave rebellions. So the same time it's benefiting the country, people are saying to be afraid of it, which is just proof that they're using the Illuminati as the boogeyman as long as they can. It should be noted that they were blamed not just for the French Revolution, but the outcome of the Battle of Waterloo, where Napoleon was defeated. So it's like,
really?
Pick a fucking side. They basically blamed the Illuminati for everything for the next 30 years. People slowly started to realize that these claims of the Illuminati had no actual evidence anywhere. They were being used as this boogeyman to keep them afraid until around the 1820s when it started to die down. And when it started to die down, they went after the Freemasons. The 1820s was when the anti-Freemasons movement started. Rulers have always looked for a way to keep people afraid of something. As for the Bavarian Illuminati, there is no actual documented trace that they picked up where they left off somewhere else. A lot of their leaders were killed. They fled. Adam, in particular, the creator of the Illuminati, lived out his life in quote-unquote exile. He was still well off. He was just in a different part of Bavaria, in a different part of Germany. It was very easy to hide back in the day. He still had rich friends, but he didn't participate in any additional secret societies to make sure he wouldn't be found. The name Illuminati is used by tons of stuff now. Societies that are not secret tend to use the term Illuminati in their crests, to sort of have that association to make people think that they're a little bit more mysterious than they are. Or they have different ranks or levels that you can reach within their society called Illuminati. And they are in no way, shape, or form attached to the Bavarian origin. They don't have assets. They don't have influence. Their public members all do not have any public seats of power or political positions. They just pretend like they're associated with it because they want to be notable.
Yeah.
They want to be noticed. So people still dig the idea of the Illuminati, though. It's super exciting. Individuals claiming to be members, but having absolutely no knowledge of the Illuminati are just fascinating to me. And then there's other folks who put out conspiracy theories, who claim that even though they are this super secret society that after being hunted to extinction in the 1800s are controlling the globe over 200 years later, somehow, despite the fact that they think all this shit is true, they know everything that the Illuminati are doing. They know the inner secrets of the inner circle of the Illuminati, and they're putting on their YouTube channels or their fucking blogs. And people don't think it's suspicious that somehow this shit is getting published, and the Illuminati are just like, yeah, what the fuck ever, go for it.
Maybe it's like vampires, right? Vampires put out a bunch of fake information to make you believe that, you know, that's how you kill them.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to get onto something that's a little bit creepy here. Before I do that, here are some fun things that have been blamed on the Illuminati in the past and then in recent history. And it really shows the way that society, especially American society, has shifted its focus away from the country itself or its leaders, just towards pop culture. They think famous people are more likely to be involved with the Illuminati than people of actual power, basically. So U.S. presidents since the early 1900s still have been accused of being members of the Illuminati, always by the opposite party. When they do something wrong, it's the Illuminati is controlling the country. JFK's assassination was supposedly done and covered up by the Illuminati. The U.S. Treasury was created by and is run by still the Illuminati, which is the whole eye above the pyramid thing on our dollar bills, which I will get to right after this. The Illuminati apparently killed Paul Walker to cover up corporate embezzlement he had discovered that he was going to expose, which has been written about and talked about on YouTube a fuck ton, and all the people that quote-unquote expose it are still alive. It's been investigated. There was no wrongdoing found in this exact claim that was made. It's so funny that people think they were so powerful they would kill Paul Walker, but not some no-name asshole from YouTube. It's just so fucking funny to me. Kesha's song, Die Young, which I don't remember, is apparently an Illuminati anthem. Katy Perry is a member of the Illuminati because of the Egyptian visuals in the Dark Horse video. The Kanye Taylor Swift thing, obviously. Lady Gaga is a puppet of the Illuminati. Beyonce and Jay-Z are the current king and queen of the Illuminati.
People just want to say queen because it's Beyonce.
They also consider the diamond symbol, like if you ever watched Diamond Dallas Page in WCW back in the day, like the diamond cutter symbol, you just put your thumb and your forefinger to each other to make a diamond. Mm-hmm. People say that that's the society's official sign, and anyone seen doing it is a member of the Illuminati, so like Jay-Z and Kanye and TN and Diamond Dallas Page. And apparently one time Trump put his hands down on a desk and made that symbol, which meant he was letting everyone know he was a member of the Illuminati. Fun fact, there is literally zero evidence that it is the actual Illuminati symbol. That was never done during the original Bavarian sect. It's just something people made up. Something funny about that dollar thing with that all-seeing eye that everyone thinks is like a conspiracy theory that shows the Illuminati are running everything. The Bavarian Illuminati's documentation that has been recovered and all the rhetoric that was documented state that this isn't the case, mainly because that symbol doesn't appear on any of it. Their symbol was an owl sitting on a book. That symbol is something else, which is interesting because that is actual overlap from different secret societies that had the idea of bringing together other religions to try and supplant the previous ones. We talked about 2 of these already. They wanted to bring in all these religions, all their secrets, all of their symbols, all of their rituals to try and just convince people to come over. The Rosicrucians Manifesto.
The Fama Fraternitatis?
The Fama Fraternitatis. It talks about the Christian Rosicrucians guy who did his pilgrimage to discover hidden secret knowledge, okay? He learned it in Arabia. He then returned, making a detour in Egypt. And they were a society including rituals and symbols from other religions and regions very heavily. In fact, in 1617, they stated that their order's origins were Egyptian, which is where that symbol comes from.
Okay.
That's the Eye of Ra. It should also be noted that the Rosicrucians are said to be responsible for the propaganda that led to the downfall of the Illuminati. All those pamphlets that brought the attention of everyone, it came from them, supposedly, and eventually led to the hunting of the Freemasons as well. But them, even though they were outlawed back in the day, they weren't hunted. There's nothing documented about them being hunted. They were sort of just left alone. They're said to have just sort of fizzled out. But not entirely. They literally still have practitioners all over the world today. I was able to find stuff in the United States, the Philippines, Italy, Europe, Russia, Asia, just by Googling a little bit. They're so big, they've actually broken apart into multiple sects. Three main sects.
Let's do it.
3 main sects cover religion, science, and then there's another one who I couldn't figure out exactly what the fuck they were dedicated to. All dedicated to a 400-year-old manifesto, which had a single goal. That goal? Universal reformation of mankind. They want to completely change all of mankind to be basically under one rule of a society that people don't see. So basically what everyone thinks the Illuminati was, these guys kind of are in a very creepy way. But I've never even heard of them. In fact, until I did this research, I never heard of the Rosicrucians or their other name as they go by, the Order of the Rose Cross.
That's what they talk about in the Da Vinci Code.
The Rose Cross is from the 9th century. Like, it was flown during Crusades. Also, the rose is totally a symbol of the Holy Grail. Just want to point that out. Super fuck creepy when you think about that. I'll go ahead and bring the Tom Hanks thing in now. You see their influences in the creation of Freemasonry when it came as a secret society, which is why they overlap so much. They have a Mason sect of the Order of the Rose Cross nowadays. It's interesting, but what do I know? I'm just a podcast host. I'm sure this ancient secret society whose symbol can be found as far back as 900 AD that is somehow barely talked about today despite their continued existence is far less likely to be influential than a society that was hunted to extinction due to their influence back in 1795. And I'm sure their survival, despite the laws outlawing them from existing, that seem to have absolutely no effect on them, is just a coincidence, along with the fact that they were absolutely responsible for those laws being put into place to hunt down the other secret societies and drive them out of existence.
Sounds like they're the ones that have hacked into,
These guys seem like the thing people should be talking about, but no one fucking talks about it because Illuminati is just a way more catchy thing that people just can't let go of. Could it be that I chose this specific episode to cover this? Because the number 200 has some significance. 2 plus 0 plus 0 is only 2. That doesn't seem very important, but maybe the zeros represent empty space, so it's different. Maybe do you take the letters 200 and count them, which is 11, and then add it to the total number of the episode when you add it together, which was 2, so you get 13. Now we're getting somewhere. 13's pretty creepy, right?
How
Knights
long
Templar.
did you try to figure all this
This was just
stuff?
stream of consciousness. It just came out of me. Maybe it's 2-0-0. Nil spelled N-I-L because it's representing the value of 0. Rearrange the letters, you get Lioneltown, a town that has a single building, but had a massive area dug up and constructed, and then it vanished in a matter of days. Some say it was moved underground.
Get the
really?
fuck out of
Absolutely not. Totally just made that last part up. But if you just decide you're going to look for something and dig into these things that don't actually have a deeper meaning and then attach a little bit of bullshit, you can make folks think it's real. And watch what I do now. Let's say I just decided to keep going with that.
All right.
And someone reached out and they're like, I can't find Lioneltown on the internet anywhere. Don't see it on Google Maps. Then I just say, that's exactly what they want you to think. They got rid of all existence of Lioneltown, and it proves that I'm right, even though all it actually proved is that I'm full of shit. And that is how conspiracy theories spread like wildfire and take root. And also, as a society, since we talked about Sir Francis Bacon and the scientific method, we shouldn't call them conspiracy theories unless they have actual, factual studies and repeated observations done. They shouldn't be called theories. It's just a bunch of random accusations with no evidence behind it. It's a conspiracy hypothesis. That said, the Order of the Rose Cross is kind of fucking scary. I definitely have added it to the topic list. There is so much shit about these dudes.
Wow.
It is nuts. I will cover them in the future if I'm still around. Who knows?
Don't say that. That's fucked up.
We're flying on Friday. Lots of things could go wrong. That, my spooky friends, is the Illuminati. Or the Illuminati.
Thank you.
But yeah, that's everything I have for this. Thank you so much for listening. I know it was a long episode, but hey, it's episode 200. We've been here for 200 episodes, and we really appreciate everyone that has listened since the beginning. I can't believe there are actually folks out there who have done that. I barely remember any of the topics that we've covered from like 50 episodes ago, let alone 200 ago. So it's a pretty big milestone. And when we hit 208, it'll be our 4-year anniversary episode. And I think we're going to do something special for that. We'll still figure it out though. But thank you so much to everyone. If you have a story you would like to send in, it doesn't have to be about secret societies or about possessions in the 1600s. It can be about anything that's happened to you: supernatural, spiritual, coincidental, true crime, extraterrestrial, or secret society or possession related. Feel free to reach out to us. Our email is storytime@scaryish.com, or you can go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on contact us. Fill out that form. It comes directly to us. And you can hit us up on social media. Twitter is @ScarishPod. Instagram is @ScarishPodcast. And Facebook is facebook.com/ScarishPodcast. We would love to hear from you. Robin, for folks who would like to donate, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/ScarishPodcast, and those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1. At $1, you get ad-free. And at $3, you get to help choose topics like our patrons did for my topic this week. And if you're not into the monthly tier type thing, you can also go to Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/ScarishPodcast, and those are one-time donations.
Indeed. So thank you so much to everyone who listened. We sincerely appreciate you. And that's everything we have for episode 200. So Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.